Good afternoon and welcome to today's press conference. I'm Stephanie Levis with the Toronto Star. I'll be moderating. We have with us Immigration Minister Marc Miller, who has some things to say, and then we will open the floor to questions. Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, bon après-midi. I first want to acknowledge our presence on the traditional unceded territory of Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The ongoing war between Israel and Hamas has created a humanitarian catastrophe of an unprecedented scale in Gaza. Depuis le début du conflit, nous nous efforçons activement de soutenir le départ assisté des citoyens canadiens, des résidents permanents et des membres de leur famille, l'Égypte, d'Israël, la Cisjordanie et de la bande de Gaza. Au cours des derniers mois, nous avons supporté les membres des familles des citoyens canadiens qui ont été en mesure de quitter Gaza et de passer en Égypte en finalisant leur demande en quelques jours afin de leur aider à poursuivre leur voyage vers le Canada pour qu'ils puissent retrouver la sécurité de leur famille. Today, I am announcing new temporary immigration measures to support family members of Canadians and permanent residents from Gaza, as well as Israelis and Palestinians already in Canada. First, we are making fee-exempt study permits or open work permits available for immediate family members of a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, provided that they are currently resided in Canada and that they left Israel or the Palestinian territories on or after October 7th of 2023. Israelis and Palestinians already in Canada who feel unsafe returning home at this time will also be eligible for the fee-exempt study or open work permits. And secondly, we understand that many are concerned about the safety of loved ones currently residing in Gaza. It is unlivable. And as such, we'll be supporting temporary residence for extended family members of Canadian citizens and permanent residents in Gaza so they can come to Canada and be reunited with their family members residing here. Extended family members include the spouse, common law partner, child regardless of age, grandchild, sibling, parent or grandparent of a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, as well as their immediate family members, i.e. spouse, partner, and dependent children. Toutes les personnes qui demandent à bénéficier du programme devront évidemment répondre à des critères d'admissibilité et de recevabilité avant de pouvoir être autorisés à venir au Canada. En même temps, je tiens à souligner qu'il est extrêmement difficile de quitter Gaza et cela ne sera peut-être pas possible pour tout le monde car les pays fixent leurs propres exigences en matière d'entrée et de sortie. We will do our utmost to assist but cannot guarantee safe passage. Canada does not determine who, when, or how many persons can cross Rafah on any particular day. We will continue to work with our partners in the region to facilitate the exit of Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and eligible family members. Finally, I have also directed that all existing and new permanent residency applications for Palestinians within the family-based streams be processed in priority, and this will allow for protected people in Canada to be more quickly reunited with their family. De plus amples informations seront bientôt disponibles. Nous allons mettre en œuvre ces mesures immédiatement afin qu'elles puissent pleinement être opérationnelles dès le 9 janvier. I want to at the same time acknowledge the tireless advocacy of those in Canada who have been calling for today's policies. To be clear, today is about providing a humanitarian pathway to safety and recognizing the importance of keeping families together given the ongoing devastation. Lorsqu'on répond à des crises internationales, le Canada adapte à chaque intervention aux besoins particuliers des personnes qui ont besoin d'aide, tout en tenant compte des réalités de la situation sur le terrain. We continue to monitor closely and will continue to monitor the situation in Gaza very closely as it evolves, and we'll adapt our response accordingly. It's crucial that we remain flexible so that we can meet the unique needs of people that we are supporting. Je souhaite reconnaître que ce conflit a affecté chacun d'entre nous différemment qui peut être profondément personnel. To Jewish, Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian Canadians, we will continue to listen and remain deeply committed to an enduring peace in the form of a two-state solution. At the same time, it's important that we recognize the horrific rise in Islamophobia, anti-Arab discrimination, and particularly of anti-Semitism in Canada. This is unacceptable and needs to end. No protest that advocates violence or hate is acceptable in this country. Alors que de plus en plus de membres de famille de Canadiens de résidents permanents peuvent rejoindre leur famille ici au Canada en toute sécurité, nous devons également assurer la sécurité des uns et des autres au sein de notre communauté. Thank you. Je vous remercie. Now,
Thank you, Minister. We'll begin in the room with questions. For the colleagues online, please use the raise hand function on Zoom if you do have a question. It will be one question, one follow-up, and as mentioned, we'll start with the room before we move online. I believe the Minister has a good chunk of time, so hopefully we'll be able to get through everyone. And we will begin with Kevin Gallagher, CTV.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Can we just be specific now on how long these, for the family members that are extended, just be specific on who this encompasses and how long that temporary visa would last? This is, of course, providing that they get through the Rafah crossing.
Yeah, and I think, Kevin, it is important to highlight how difficult it is to get through the Rafah gate at this time or any other exit from Gaza. These are situations that are not under control. We have had not unsubstantial difficulty getting Canadians and permanent residents out. It has required advocacy from our teams and those of Global Affairs Canada. Those family members, as I mentioned, include spouses, common law partners, children regardless of age, grandchildren, siblings, parents of grandparents of a Canadian citizen or permanent residents, and their immediate family members. We've had limited ability to get Canadians and permanent residents out, but we have limited it to closer family unit definitions. And this expands the definition and allows us a greater set of people that may not be permanent residents or Canadians, but for all intents and purposes represent the family of people that are close to Canadians. The time period for staying on a temporary basis will be 3 years, and consistent with other policies that we've put into place.
Follow up, I just have a question from my colleagues at CTV Toronto. An Ontario Superior Court has ruled it's unconstitutional for Canada to deny citizenship to children born abroad because a parent was born overseas. And a lawyer for the families involved says the humane thing for the government to do now is not appeal. So the question is, does the government plan to appeal this decision or let it stand and let the families get on with their lives and citizenship for their children?
You know, I'm going to have to review the case. I only found out about it yesterday. Was following it. We'll have to look at the decision. Very sympathetic to the idea that someone who was cut off in that fashion, there's a level of unfairness, I think, to it. It was a measure that was put into place by a prior government, and our government has objected to it, and we do have legislation going through Parliament that is intended to address and redress the situation. So whether we appeal it will depend on the ruling itself and the particular points on which it was decided, but I can be quite clear in saying that I am very sympathetic to the reality of the people that had to go to court to get that judgment, but it'll be a decision that we'll have to let you know a little more about later.
Chris Rance, CBC.
Hi, Minister. Good to see you. You've said that Canada wants to put as many people on the list to get folks out of Gaza as it wants, but ultimately it's up to Israel to actually allow these people to leave. What assurances do you have from the Israelis that more Canadians like this, they will actually be able to leave, and will you have to run each one through the name and so on? If you would, please.
There is an extensive vetting system that is done on the ground, and it depends on the Israelis have their say. They will screen people and decide whether they leave or don't leave. We don't have any assurances as of yet, and it'll be a discussion that we will have to have. We rely on the good faith of the parties on the ground, and we have had some good success in getting people out that we have put on our list. But their list and our list are sometimes different, and it requires discussions on the ground with our teams. So no particular assurances. We are going to make sure that we have a cohesive list of people and motivations for them to come out based on this family definition that's now expanded. And whether they do or don't get out will not be dependent on Canada, but we'll put the effort in.
And my supplementary, Palestinians fleeing their homes and being forced abroad is a sensitive issue in the region, in the history of the region. Is that why there's an emphasis today on temporary work and study permits versus permanent resettlement, in contrast with the Syrians and the Ukrainians, for instance?
I think the logic at the end of the day is to get people out and to make sure they're safe. Inevitably, it'll be a question of choice. We just want to get them together and back with their families as quickly as we can, and that's the objective of today. I do understand the geopolitical considerations and the historical reality of the people living in Gaza, but at this time, that I think played very little in the final consideration, which is to put together a policy that is temporary in nature, just to keep people and to get people safe for a period of 3 years.
Louis Blouin.
Bonjour, Monsieur le ministre. Il y a peut-être des gens qui écoutent ça qui se disent à quoi ça sert d'annoncer ces mesures-là aujourd'hui si le passage de Rafah est bloqué, si on n'a pas de garantie de pouvoir sortir les gens. Est-ce que vous en avez obtenu des garanties? Est-ce que vous avez espoir qu'un jour ça débloque? Est-ce que ça vaut la peine d'annoncer ça si on n'a pas de garantie?
Oui, ça vaut la peine, Louis. Déjà, on avait eu un certain succès à faire sortir des gens qui n'étaient pas dans notre définition classique de gens qui étaient Canadiens résidents permanents ou la famille nucléaire pour lesquels on militait la sortie de Rafah. Mais là, de faire ça de façon conséquente et cohérente avec nos définitions et notre politique qu'on vient de rédiger, on n'a pas les garanties. Je pense qu'il faut démontrer l'effort. Il y a beaucoup de familles au Canada qui attendent leurs proches. Il y a des gens qui sont peut-être restés à cause du fait que ces gens-là faisaient partie de leur famille, mais qui ne faisaient pas partie de la définition. Donc, il y a peut-être espoir d'avoir plus de personnes et gain de cause en conséquence. Je n'ai pas les garanties de l'État d'Israël ou de Hamas ou de l'Égypte que ces gens puissent sortir, mais on va déployer les efforts nécessaires pour le faire. Oui, je pense que ça vaut la peine. Les gens le réclamaient depuis fort longtemps, puis je pense que c'est la bonne chose à faire, puis moi, je pense qu'il faut essayer.
Est-ce que vous avez une estimation du nombre de personnes qui pourraient bénéficier de ce que vous annoncez aujourd'hui?
On a un sens à près de plusieurs centaines, mais pas un estimé précis pour l'instant, mais on pense dans les centaines.
Murray Wolf.
Yeah, could I just ask the same question in English, which is, do you have an estimate of the numbers we're talking about?
So we're thinking, Mary, in the hundreds. It isn't clear. We don't have a precise number of people, given that the people that are being covered are ones that we wouldn't have an immediate count of. They're not Canadians or permanent residents. But if you extrapolate from the number of people that we have brought out and look at perhaps what their family relations are, it looks like it could be in the hundreds, but we don't have a clear, precise sense at this time.
Practical questions such as, security vetting. Would that take place in Egypt? How would that work? And the other question is about unaccompanied minors. Have you thought about what would happen there? I mean, there's a potential danger of human trafficking. And can I just clarify, the government isn't offering to pay for their airfare. They're simply saying we're going to give you the visa. Is that correct?
Yeah, there could be circumstances where we will ask people to sponsor, and there could be circumstances, exigent circumstances, where the government of Canada could loan the money, as we do in similar cases. We have, in one particular instance, asked a family to come over and recover unaccompanied minors who had lost their family in Egypt. And so getting minors out is extremely difficult, particularly if they have lost, if they're unaccompanied or if they've lost their parents. And the concern of human trafficking is top of mind. In terms of the security, really two stages. The first stage is the one that is done by the authorities on the ground at Rafah Gate that have their own security screening vetting procedure. And we will be performing biometrics as well in Cairo. So really a two-staged approach before anyone is allowed to come to Canada.
Mackenzie.
Hi, Minister. Just to switch things up to talk about housing, there's a new report out from the Bank of Canada that says that roughly on a quarterly basis, the Canadian population growth that we've seen so far, there needs to be roughly 250,000 new housing starts every month to keep up with the number of people who are coming to Canada. That's on top of housing issues that we already have. Do you think it's fair for the Canadian government to allow new students, temporary foreign workers to come to Canada when it's clear that there is such a housing issue in this country right now?
Yeah, and it, with some, these two issues have been increasingly tied together, and there is obviously a correlation we need to look at. Clearly, the number of people that are here temporarily in this country has skyrocketed over the last few years, and we've seen that growth in the last quarter. I think we have to clearly understand what that means, whether it's students, whether it's Ukrainians under the QIT program, whether it's agricultural workers. I think each category does bear some examination. Some people are more capable of getting housing, some people are already housed. It's clear that does put pressure on the system and particularly our housing needs. I've signaled over the last few weeks that two things. One, that we need to get the challenge of international students and the volumes coming in under control, particularly in an area where they are here on a fraudulent basis or on an abusive basis. I think people can expect further steps in the new year to curb that. I think we need to look at the postgraduate work permits that fuel people being here on a temporary basis as well. That is typically a multi-year proposition, so whether those people ultimately leave or not, these are all things that we need to get to, frankly, rein in and get under control. That's going to require some really difficult discussions with provinces over the course of the next couple months. I think the ultimate volume is too much, and we need to rein it in, but it needs to be done in the right way. And that's, I think, the challenge that we'll have over the next few months as we engage with provinces, get them to sort out really what they are doing, particularly in some areas with international students, but in the right way. As I've said, turning off the tap from the federal government is a pretty rough instrument. And if provinces can't get their houses in order, we're prepared to do it. But it's going to require some conversations first, just out of the ability to use our own particular areas of jurisdiction effectively. But clearly, the increase in temporary work permits and the sheer volume of people is something that we need to rein in the new year.
So Canadians should expect, and folks who could be thinking and hearing your comments about potentially coming to Canada should expect that there'll be fewer permits issued both for temporary foreign workers and for international students. Just looking for some clarity on your comment there.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, you're sort of mixing two categories that are related. International students get postgraduate work permits, and so one feeds into the other. Both represent increased volume that we've seen jump astronomically in the last few years, even when you net out the period during COVID. So it's something that has created some unanticipated effects, and it's something that we need to rein in. I'm prepared to do it. The government's prepared to do it, but it's got to come with some serious conversations with the affected jurisdictions to make sure that they're doing their jobs as well. So I'm not trying to target individuals. I'm trying to target the effect of a system that's just run a bit rampant for too long and is causing an impact that is not unappreciable.
We are going to move online. Again, I'll ask my online colleagues if you have a question to please use the raise hand function. We're going to begin with Emily Bergeron. Emily? No. Okay, we cannot seem to hear Emily, so I'm going to go to Laura Osmond, the Canadian Press.
Good afternoon, Minister. Right?
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Fantastic. Minister, people are going to have a lot of questions about how exactly it works. I'm wondering, can you just walk us through what the process is going to be for families, what kind of documents they need, given the extreme difficulties in Gaza right now? What kind of process there's going to be in terms of when they get out of Gaza? Is that when they do biometrics and all that sort of thing? And what happens if they do that process and then are not admitted to Canada, what happens to them then?
Legitimate questions, Laura. You've walked through a whole waterfall of scenarios where things could potentially go wrong. Whether this is a good or bad thing, Gazans tend to have be some heavily documented individuals, just because of the reality they've been living in for sometimes their entire existence. We will require documentation in order to get to Canada. As I explained to Mary, there will be a process just to get people out of Gaza, which will be, knowing from experience, very intensive from a security perspective, as well as the biometrics that will need to be performed in Cairo. We want to get this program and are getting this program up and running as quickly as possible. As we have done in prior programs, we will have a portal that is opened and a communications plan with families to make sure that they are properly accompanied in being able to sponsor someone or a family member. There will be obviously a process of verification in making sure people do get out. I think that security is paramount. Some of it is not under our control, but we will make sure that that we are also being flexible when it comes to exigent circumstances. And when we look at the risk analysis that we apply to getting people out, this is something that I think we have to take quite seriously. I'm not going to examine the scenarios and the potential for things to go wrong. We are working in real time to make sure that it works for people that want to get their extended family out as quickly as they can.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, I thought I heard you say that the minor dependents of extended family members also qualify, for example, nieces and nephews of Canadians, is that right?
Siblings and their direct family members.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So you're about to get a lot of phone calls from very desperate families right before the holidays. Is the government prepared to answer those phone calls over the holidays, given that things are slowing down? What's the staffing situation going to be like?
The holiday plans of the Government of Canada should not be ones that people are as much as they work hard, ones that people that are facing war should be worrying about. We're doing our utmost to ramp this up as quickly as possible, and there will be availability to reach people over the holidays. You will get more details from my team on what that looks like exactly over the next couple hours or couple days, Laura.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you.
We'll try to go again to Emily Bergeron. Emily?
Oui, bonjour, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Good afternoon, can you hear me?
Oui, super.
Yes.
Monsieur Miller,
Mr. Miller,
on peut penser par exemple au programme spécial
we
qui
could
avait
think
été
about the
mis en place
special program that
concernant les
was
Ukrainiens,
introduced for
l'autorisation
Ukrainians,
d'urgence
the emergency
Ukraine-Canada, pour je ne
authorization
sais pas le nom complet exact
that
du
was
programme.
provided. I don't
C'était
have the
aussi pour 3
specific
ans.
name. It was also for 3 years.
Par contre, chaque conflit est différent.
Conversely,
dans
every
le
conflict
contexte
situation is
ci,
different. In this context,
quelles leçons ont été tirées
what lessons have we
quelles leçons ont
learned
pu être tirées de ce qui s'est passé en
from
Ukraine,
the
les
Ukrainian
programmes
situation,
d'immigration spéciaux qui avaient été développés
the
à
special
l'instant et en quoi
immigration
ça a pu
program that was
servir un
in
peu
place
à
at that time.
votre feuille de route
What have we
à
learned
l'heure
from
actuelle.
that to use the current, to introduce in the current roadmap?
Ben, je pense que ces deux
Answer,
programmes,
I
oui,
think-
et je commencerai en
Well,
disant que
first of all,
le programme spécial
the
de l'Ukraine
special
en est un qui
program
était vraiment
for
exceptionnel,
Ukraine was
évidemment, vu le
exceptional.
volume. Il y a plusieurs
And considering
centaines
the volume,
de mille de personnes qui sont maintenant au
hundreds
Canada
and
grâce à ce
thousands of people
programme.
are now in Canada thanks to that program.
Oui, on regarde
Yes,
J'hésite à tirer
I hesitate
des conclusions, à même des
to draw
comparaisons,
conclusions
parce que
or make
évidemment, chaque
comparisons
conflit
because
est unique.
clearly every
Il y a des
conflict
éléments qui
situation
sont
is unique.
similaires dans le
There
programme,
are
mais il y a des
similarities
éléments
in the
qui, de
program,
façon fonctionnelle,
but
ne sont pas les
there
mêmes.
are
On
some
parle
which are not the
ici, on
same
parle
when you look at the way it functions.
de sponsorship, donc
We
c'est-à-dire
are
des
talking
gens
about
qui ont de la famille
sponsorship,
ici,
so we mean
qui
people
vont
who
pouvoir
have family
parrainer
members here who
leur
will be
famille.
able
On
to
parle de
sponsor
famille.
their family
On ne parle
members.
pas d'un groupe
We are
étendu
talking
de gens
about
qui n'ont
families.
aucune
We are not talking
connexion
about
avec
a
le
group
Canada. Dans le cas
of
de
people
l'Ukraine,
who have no
oui, il y avait des
connection
familles, il y avait
with
une
Canada.
diaspora,
In
mais
the
il y a
Ukraine
bon nombre de gens
situation,
qui
yes,
ont
there were
aucune
family
connexion
members.
avec
There was the Ukrainian
avec le Canada,
diaspora,
outre
but there
le
were
fait qu'ils
many
sont ici
who did
maintenant.
not have any connection
Donc oui, des
with
différences.
Canada
J'hésite à
and
comparer
who
de
are now
façon
here. So I hesitate to make any
ligne pour ligne
comparisons.
dans chaque politique.
with
parce qu'elles sont
the policy line for line
parce qu'elles sont uniques.
because
Mais c'est
each
clair
one
que
is unique.
chaque fois
But
qu'on
clearly,
révise, même
every
chaque fois
time
qu'on rédige une
we
politique,
revise or
on regarde
draft
on
a
regarde ce qui marche,
policy,
on
we
regarde ce qui
look
marche
at
pas,
what works,
on
we look
regarde la
at what
réalité
doesn't
sur le
work,
terrain.
we look at the realities on the ground.
Dans le cas de l'Ukraine, il y
In
avait
the case of
un
Ukraine,
gouvernement
there
fonctionnel
was a functional
qui n'était pas une
government
entité terroriste.
which
Dans
was
ce
not a
cas-ci,
terrorist entity.
on a le
In
Hamas
this
qui
case, we have Hamas,
une organisation
which is
terroriste
a
à Gaza, donc
terrorist
la réalité
organization in
est toute
Gaza.
différente.
So the
Quant à
situation
la
is very
capacité
different
d'évacuer
when we
ces
look at
gens-là,
the capacity of evacuating those
évidemment
people.
l'étendue et la
Clearly,
portée
the
du programme
extent
qui
and
est
scope
dans ce cas-ci
of the
plus
program
limité.
in this case is very limited.
Merci beaucoup. Et
Thank you.
pour ce qui est de après
Question.
le 3 ans
Now,
de
after the
résidence
3-year
temporaire,
period of the
est-ce que ça
temporary
passera par des
residency,
canaux de programmes
will they have
préexistants
to go
d'immigration?
through
Donc,
the
une fois
existing
que ces
immigration
gens-là
pathways?
auront pu gagner le Canada,
Once
auront
they
écoulé
arrive
leur,
Canada
leur résidence de 3 ans,
and they have
quel
stayed
chemin
here for 3
s'offrirait à eux
years,
s'ils désirent
what
rester plus longtemps?
pathways will be available for them?
Mais là, la priorité, c'est
Answer.
évidemment, c'est qu'ils
The
soient
priority
sains et saufs
now
ici au
is
Canada.
for them to be safe
Dans
in-
3 ans,
here
je
in
ne sais
Canada.
pas ce que
In
sera
3
ou
years, I don't know
ce qui adviendra de
what
la bande de
is
Gaza.
going to happen
Espérons
at the Gaza
qu'il y
Strip.
aura la paix.
Let's hope that there's going to
Et
be
dans ce cas-là, le
peace.
choix de pouvoir
In that
retourner.
case, they will have
Évidemment,
the choice to go back. Of course,
on évaluera,
we
réévaluera au
will
cas
be
pour cas.
assessing
Sachez
and
qu'on fait face
reassessing the situation on a case-by-case
au même dilemme
basis,
en ce qui a trait à l'Ukraine, parce que le 3
knowing
ans
that
vient
we
à
may be
échéance
facing
dans
the same
une couple de
dilemma
mois.
as we are facing now with the Ukrainian
compte pas
situation
retourner
because the
qui que ce
3-year
soit dans
period
une
will
zone
be
de guerre.
expiring in 3 months. But this is a war zone. We
Merci.
don't know what will happen. Thank you.
We're going to come back to the room because we have a few more minutes. Louis Blouet.
Monsieur Miller, hier, dans son entrevue de fin
Question,
d'année,
Mr. Miller.
le premier ministre
The
a parlé des demandeurs
Prime
d'asile.
Minister
Il a dit qu'il y avait des
talked
discussions en
about
cours avec le Mexique.
refugee
Ma question,
seekers
est-ce
yesterday and
qu'on
talked
est
about
en train
Mexico.
de songer à réinstaurer les
yesterday.
visas
Are we thinking about
pour les gens du
reinstating
Mexique?
visas
Est-ce que
for
ça fait
people
partie
from
des
Mexico?
considérations en cours?
Is that part of
Sinon,
the
de quoi parle-t-on
considerations?
avec le gouvernement
Or
mexicain?
what were we
Ben,
discussing with the Mexican government?
C'était pas uniquement
Answer.
l'entrevue de fin
That
d'année.
was not
il avait
really
avait
only
parlé avec
mentioned
son homologue
only
au
during the
Mexique.
end-of-year
C'est
interview.
clair
He
que
mentioned this in
quand
Mexico
on a
as well.
levé l'exigence d'avoir des visas pour
When
rentrer au Canada,
the visa
le
requirements
Mexique nous
for
avait fait
Mexicans was
plusieurs
lifted,
représentations
there were various representations that were
qui ne
made
se sont pas réalisées.
which were not
On
realized.
voit notamment avec les gens qui viennent du Mexique,
With people coming from
mis à
Mexico,
part les flux économiques qui sont très importants,
besides the economic
je veux pas les
flows
minimiser,
that are
qu'il y a une
significant,
forte
I don't
demande
want to minimize that.
d'asile notamment.
There's
Et le taux de
a high
succès
rise in
à date diffère de
demand
celui des autres
for refugee
demandeurs
status.
d'asile. Les gens qui viennent ici demandent de l'asile, généralement,
People
ça,
who come here
ça frise
generally
le
ask for
50+%
asylum.
après
It's-
que le tribunal ait pris sa décision. Dans le cas du Mexique,
In the case
c'est à
of
peu près
Mexico,
30%.
it's about
Des gens qui n'ont pas le droit
30%.
d'être ici, qui
People who don't have the right to
n'avaient
be
aucune
here,
intention de
who had no
repartir au
intention
Mexique,
to go back to
et que ça crée un
Mexico.
problème de volume. C'est pas tout
So
le
there's a
monde qui a le
problem
droit de
of
venir au
volume.
Canada.
So it's not
Alors, on
everybody
regarde nos
who
options.
has the
J'ai
right
rien
to come
à
to
vous
Canada.
annoncer
I have
publiquement
no
pour l'instant.
public announcement to make for now.
Mais je pense que ça va
But
prendre
I think
un tour de vis à un moment donné si ça continue.
Est-ce
We'll have to look
que
into that if
l'option
it
de réimposer
continues.
des visas
Question,
est sur la table?
is
Il
the
y a beaucoup
option
d'options sur la table.
of
J'hésite d'en parler
reimposing
publiquement pour
the
l'instant.
visas on the
C'est
table?
clair que,
Answer yes,
il
it
va falloir
remains
faire
an
quelque
option,
chose,
but we'll need to make some decision at some point.
I believe that brings us to the end of today's press conference. Thank you, Minister, for your time. I wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season. Au revoir.
Thank you.